There'll Never Be a Story of Forgiveness by Thomas DeBarge, Chapter 5, Souls Knit Together. The births of the DeBarge children spanned over a period of 14 years. We were a close-knit family in an awkward way. We hadn't learned real love, so we were acting out a counterfeit value amongst one another that eventually became our truth. My home had always been a pit of jealousy, competition, envy, incest, and strife. This was the love I was nurtured in. I suffered. Suffering was what brought me close to my brothers and sisters. That was our strongest bond. Complaints and joy were rare among us as a whole because of the rivalry. I was unable to effectively communicate my affection for those I cared for or to receive the love they had for me because of the curse that seemed to be attached to my family. There was so much rage and violence, not just with Daddy, but also among us kids. It was like a constant boxing match of emotions. The bell would sound, and the next two competitors would step into the ring. I felt comfortable in my abnormal circle. I learned to adapt to what I thought was love. I didn't know any better. I wasn't even aware my family was dysfunctional until I got older and someone told me. I made the most of what I had to work with in my big, compassionate heart that became overly guarded. What one DeBarge did, the others inevitably carried out as well. I was joined hand in hand to my siblings. From firstborn to last, there was a tight grip of what people eventually called DeBarge demons that yoked me to sabotaging everything I put my hands to. I tried to walk a good path, but every time I gained a bit of confidence, a brother's or sister's words would knock me to the ground. It reminded me of when the car hit me. I laid there helpless. It took me a long time to heal, and some scars were visible on my body forever. Bunny played a big part in my life when I was a boy. She was the oldest and my source of acceptance in place of Mama, who seemed to have little time to give me the kind words I needed. I relied heavily on Bunny, which I shouldn't have because she was of the same scattered, unstable mindset as me. But I had a need to know she accepted me, probably because I felt Mama didn't. I had hoped to receive from her a woman's attention as she was the only other female in my life on a daily basis. I was only setting myself up for a big letdown by making her my wall of confidence. Still, I wanted a close relationship with my sister. She had a gift of encouragement that for the most part stayed in its original gift box. Despite this wonderful trait, she would often be moody and insensitive towards me, not wanting to be bothered with me at all. How she treated me made all the difference in my demoralized mind. If she encouraged me, I stood tall. If she criticized me, I became a helpless invalid. Her thoughtfulness carried me through some real tough times, though. As the oldest, she thought I should agree with her at all times. As I got older, I quit going along with Bunny's ideas. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. I wanted to do things my way sometimes, but Bunny didn't grow up out of her bossiness. She always felt like she was right. She would make sure everyone knew how foolish and dumb I was by going out of her way to mock me and talk down on me. When constant criticism replaced the encouraging words she was supposed to speak, she became a murderer with her tongue, cutting me into a million pieces. She would tell me I had a big mouth, which I did, but all of us ran our mouths. None of us respected anyone's private business or cared if our words publicly ridiculed someone else. I guess I was a particular big mouth, though. Nothing seemed embarrassing enough to me to keep private. When I found something out, I had to tell it to anyone and everyone. It made me feel important to be able to tell everything I knew. I can't remember anything terrible that I told on her as a child, but she was sure irritated that I ran my mouth like a talk show host. She hated that about me. Soon, everyone else was saying the same thing about me, that I talked too much. Her words, negative or positive, had the power of influence. It was strange how Bunny could be very angry at me, but if she saw someone at school picking on me, she'd step right in. She was always protective of me like that. She didn't even care if I was wrong or that she might not know the whole story. She would give me the motherly spiel later. I was her brother regardless, and she always stood up for me. At home, there came a time when she completely stopped letting me know how much she cared about me. The encouragement came to an end altogether and was replaced by nothing but harshness. I didn't stop to think she may have been going through something. I automatically took it personally, assuming that she just stopped liking me after a while. Bunny had been close to Mama as a child, but rebelled during her teen years. She became a handful as soon as she was old enough to understand things at home shouldn't have been the way they were. I watched the relationship deteriorate during that time, but I didn't really know why. A large ditch gradually formed between me and her as well. I later learned Bunny was sexually abused by Daddy. He had taken advantage of her on many occasions. He not only fondled her, but he actually had sex with her. This was something that began while she was still in elementary school. I was too young to really understand the depth of what all that meant. I only knew it changed the spirit of my sister. It corrupted her and made her a different girl. That bold person capable of molding a piece of clay into a sturdy brick building disintegrated in the fire. In retrospect, I understand why her character seemed torn around the time of her adolescence. Situations of incest were vivid in my mind once I put the pieces together, such as her coming into me in Bobby's room with her pants undone after leaving the basement where Daddy had summoned her for chores. There were numerous times that Mama would go to church and leave us kids behind. I could only imagine he was abusing her then too, while Mama was out praising her God. I specifically remembered one occasion when Daddy angrily told Bobby and me to go to our room while Bunny was to clean up a portion of the house that had been cleaned spotless earlier. It confused me why he wanted it cleaned again. Her voice was like a roaring lion, so I never questioned him. His voice was like a roaring lion, so I never questioned him. Bunny returned upstairs a bit later, and I could tell she had been crying. I never saw with my own eyes Daddy hurting Bunny, but the emotional bruises were evidence. I would have taken several times 7 more beatings if that would have kept Daddy from hurting her. Bunny may have thought herself to be alone, but I was really with her in her world of despair. We tossed and turned uncomfortably in our separate beds of misery, only to wake up lying next to each other exhausted. She became unapproachable by me because of her shame and rage. I never told Bunny how I felt about her, how I admired her and needed her. The time was never right after the abuse. It left us all feeling insignificant. My brother Randy was right behind me in age. He was the greatest brother in the world. I couldn't have made it through childhood without him. He was my sympathetic brother who wasn't afraid to put his arm around my shoulder to let me know he cared. His tolerant attitude allowed him to be considerate of me when others pushed me away. He greeted everyone with a smile. I believed him to be the display of the fruit that was supposed to be growing on our family's tree. He was personable and had great showmanship when Mama took us around town as a young singing group. I looked forward to playing with Randy every day. If he weren't my brother, he would have been my choice as a best friend. We built bikes together out of old frames and other junk we'd find throughout the neighborhood. We would ride them for a while and then give them away to other kids. We caught frogs at Farmer's Field and went fishing together. To Randy, the joy of catching a fish was giving the fish away. Randy and I were a lot alike when it came to that. We were both carefree and friendly. Both of us simply enjoyed bringing smiles to other people's faces by giving. We didn't care if we were left with nothing. We'd go back the next day and start all over. On one alley hunting adventure, Randy and I found a briefcase filled with money. Randy's first thought was to give it to Mama. I agreed with him, of course. We were too young to know what to do with money other than blow it at the corner store. We rushed home and burst into the house like pirates who just discovered lost treasure. We were both excited as we watched Mama count bills in excess of $200. That was a great moment that made us start to take alley hunting a bit more serious. We made sure to check people's discarded junk thoroughly because we had proof that great things could be found. Randy's presence emptied my mind of troubles. When we were out playing, I never thought about the abuse that awaited me at home until it was actually time to return there. I'd sometimes get quiet on the walk home, knowing that a beating awaited me, perhaps a chore I'd forgotten, or articles of clothing I neglected to put away. Randy stood outside that door of my world, only looking in. He felt compassion for me. I often wondered how he could remain so happy through our family's turmoil. Maybe he thought the same thing about me when we'd play each day. Smiling, laughing, having fun, and changing the subject were Randy's way of coping. He had a typical family faults and was filled with the same hostility as the rest of us. He just covered his hurt in a different way. Teasing awaited Randy at school due to his slower pace of learning than classmates. He used his personality to deflect physical altercations, something I wasn't good at. Everybody liked Randy. He was silly, which enabled him to laugh off comments that were meant to ridicule him. Someone would tease him, he'd say something funny back, and then everyone would all laugh together. It took a lot to get Randy to the point of a fist fight, but when he did reach it, his contender best beware. I remember a neighbor who came to our house on Giddings Street in Grand Rapids to complain about Mama's trash. When Mama ignored his instructions how she should empty her trash bin, he came back a second time and got loud with her on the front porch. Randy overheard him talking crazy to Mama. He went outside and warned the man not to approach Mama's house again, threatening to deal with the neighbor physically if he should choose to return. His tone of voice put fear in the man so that he didn't bother Mama again. Randy, my naturally sweet character brother, couldn't escape the curse of bitterness that was evident in the DeBarge family. His good fruit, upon later inspection, would prove to be withering and fallen from its branches on our dead tree. His personality became more wild and tame during adolescence when the reality of our dysfunction began to define us. His smile would remain, but only face deep, like that of a hypocrite. He learned to respond to situations instead of walking confidently in the joy he was once able to find within. Marty was next in line after Randy. The 2 years separating him and me drew him more to involvement with younger brothers once they came along. We were somewhat in sets when it came to our interaction with one another. The first group was Bobby, Bunny, me, and Randy. Marty was the beginning of the second fraction of us, which consisted of him, James, and Elle. Chico bordered between the second group and the last of Daryl and Carol. Marty was the younger brother that I aggravated the most. The aggrieved emotions I housed towards those who mistreated me were released on him routinely. It wasn't until the writing of this book that I even realized the nature of our altercations. I used him as a receptacle for my resentment, pouring all my frustration into him. He paid the price for those who had hurt me. Every response I couldn't render in defense of myself was taken out on Marty. By ordering him around, I had hoped to find some relief from my pain. Something evil within me preyed upon Marty's frailty in the same manner that Daddy seemed to mark me as his target. I couldn't overpower Daddy, but I could vent my frustrations on the weakness I saw in this particular brother. Perhaps that was what Daddy subconsciously thought about me in comparison to the evil he battled in his own mind. I teased Marty about things he had no control over, just as family members did me. I took advantage of his petite build to beat him down physically and make him feel insecure about his identity. I was giving back to him what I had been forced to receive from others. I talked down to Marty and pushed him around every chance I got, just like Bobby did to me. Because of my sensitive nature, I actually felt guilty about mistreating Marty, but I would keep those feelings to myself. 2 personalities warred inside me when it came to him. My heart went out to my little brother in the midst of what I was doing to him. But then again, it was good to have someone else be the victim instead of me. It made me feel like I had a little control on life. When I took a good look at him, I saw myself. He was a part of me, a fragile section of my own self that I was really trying to do away with every time I mistreated him. I knew torment awaited Marty at school and in our neighborhood since he was me all over again. Small, inferior, and the brunt of everyone's joke. I discerned cruel boys picking on him and punching him. I had lost every round fought in school when I was his age because I refused to throw any punches until I got older. I didn't know how to reason with him or tell him I cared about what happened to him, so I just taught him how to fight. That was the only advice I had other than run like a gazelle. Marty liked courtesy and tidiness. He felt people should be respected along with their personal space and items that belonged to them. It was difficult to maintain comfortable boundaries with so many of us living under one roof, yet Marty still attempted to keep his things orderly and secured. Thinking he could break off into his own world of perfection within our household was pretty absurd. I knew he liked things just right, so I deliberately sought to bring his world into chaos. He had a school outing coming up, and he had prepared his lunch. He made a sandwich and placed it in a bag with 2 cookies. He put it neatly away in the back of the refrigerator for safekeeping. I knew he had made the lunch, and when Randy and I came upon it, I suggested we eat it. The sandwich was delicious, and the cookies really topped it off as a sweet treat. Marty later checked on his lunch and found it missing. He looked around for it and then asked Randy and me if we had seen 2 cookies and 1 sandwich. We immediately burst into laughter. We mocked him by repeating 2 cookies and 1 sandwich just the way he said it. He knew we'd eaten his lunch. Marty responded with, "What a brother, bench," which was his substitute word for bitch. He was angry and told us we had no manners. We teased him all day with that one. One day, Randy, Marty, and I went to the riverbank. There was a warehouse there that had always attracted our attention. We jumped the fence to get on the tractors that were in the yard. We had fun pushing the buttons that started and stopped their engines. They were like big toys. We had played on them before, and the owner had caught us. He had warned us not to come onto his property anymore, but we would sneak and do it anyway. Randy and I saw a man come out of the warehouse, so we took off running. We hollered to Marty, but he was moving too slow, so we left him behind. We jumped back over the fence by the time the man grabbed Marty. Randy and I watched the man lift Marty by the waistband, which drew Marty's pants tied around his buttocks, and spanked Marty 5 times really hard on his butt. With his pants being pulled tight, it had to have penetrated through his flesh. "I told you young whippersnappers to stay off my tractors," the angry man scolded. Marty ran in our direction when the man finally released him, but he turned to call him a bench. Randy and I laughed and teased Marty all the way home.